Today's focus is on the IBC protocol roadmap. And just like yesterday, we're going to start off with a few words from Maria, the Managing Director here at the ICF, followed by team presentations and Q&A. During the presentations, please do be frank with your feedback, and you can ask questions throughout the presentation using the Q&A tab at the bottom, or you can raise your hand to speak live during the Q&A segments. Please be frank with your feedback, but of course, keep it professional and be respectful. So you know, the space is being recorded and it's being broadcast on YouTube. Given the limited amount of time that we have, not every question will necessarily be answered live, but the teams are capturing all your feedback. Of course, this call isn't to specifically problem solve every single issue that might come up during the discussion, but the idea is that we want to surface as many perspectives as possible, and then the IBC developer community calls can be a venue for you guys to go in depth into specific issues. Yeah, so with that, I'm going to pass it on to Maria, the Managing Director here at the ICF.
Thank you, Said. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today again. I want to remind everybody what's the outcome of this call. First is for everybody to have an understanding of the roadmap, and today is the IBC roadmap, and also an understanding of what could be the potential impact on the different projects that people are working on, the community of builders using IBC. The second outcome that we want is to offer an opportunity here during the call for the community to give feedback on that roadmap. This is not the only time that people are going to be able to give feedback. However, it would be great if you do that already here. This is a very important exercise that we are doing for everybody, for us, for the teams that we work with, and also for the entire community. Having a roadmap really makes communication easier, and it facilitates all the collaboration and coordination that we need to do, not only among the ICF and in the developer teams, but also with the broader community. Having a roadmap, it really keeps everybody on track. It keeps everybody aligned. Everybody knows what's going on, who is working on what. This is going to be very useful for everybody. And also it creates a sense of collective responsibility. We also want that. It's going to make it easier for potential new developers that would like to contribute to the stack to plug in, and also potentially also for resource allocators that would like to chime in and fund certain pieces of the different roadmaps of the stack. This roadmap, this first roadmap is focused on near-term strategic goals for 2024, but the idea is that we want to expand this to a multi-year horizon. You know, like a roadmap is a document with strategic plans that are a living document, and it's constantly evolving. So what to expect after this call is, please make sure that you give feedback, as I already said. This is not the only opportunity. You guys also have a form, and so everybody's going to be able to give write-in feedback. And also the different developer teams that are working in the different areas of the stack, like IBC, they are running also community calls. After this call, more or less at the end of the week, we are going to send an email to everybody with the information of when and the times where those calls are happening, and so you guys are able to continue this discussion. The idea is that this open up a broader discussion on the roadmaps. And the feedback is a continuous thing. One of the ways to frame the discussion here today on a high level is to, you guys ask yourself, the community in general, if you feel that something is missing out of that roadmap, and if you think that the focus that the teams are proposing are not the right one, what is it that you think you need for next year, or what is it that you think IBC really needs in order to keep being competitive? And that's it. Thanks again, and I hope that this call is useful for everybody. So I hand it over to Susanna.
Hello. So yeah, I'm Susanna. If people out there haven't met me before, I think I see most people there I've met before, but I'm the product lead for the IBC team at Interchain. I'm gonna share my screen and I'll just do a run through of the roadmap document that hopefully most of you have read before, or if not, you can read it afterwards, or but anyway, we're going to run through now. So hopefully, as you're all here, you all know what IBC is, but it's an interoperability protocol which connects blockchains basically, and we think IBC is going to be fundamental in the future of the blockchain space. We hope it's going to be the interoperability protocol which will unite a diverse blockchain ecosystem. And I'll just cover a bit the background of this roadmap document. Since IBC was launched, it's had tremendous growth. It's been around for 2.5 years now, and it's been really successful in Cosmos. There's more than 100 chains right now connected and actively using IBC Go. And we also have a connection with the Polkadot ecosystem now. So it's really grown. Some numbers, 30 billion in value transferred from January last year to February of this year. So it's really, really something big and important in the Cosmos ecosystem. And I think another testament to the success of IBC is that there are lots of people actively building and using IBC. Beyond teams just funded by the ICF, lots of people are making innovative applications and middleware and having cross-chain workflows, which are really, really impressive and extensive. And, oh, sorry, did someone say something?
I think Maria's mic was on. She had a little echo.
Okay. Yeah, so there's really a lot going on, and I think it's a testament to how impressive the protocol really is. But with that in mind, we're just going to really focus on the deliverables for the specification, IBC Go, IBCRS, and Hermes in this part. And I just mentioned some prerequisites for things that weren't necessarily mentioned in this document, that we hope that they would be done before the start of the new year. So if you notice something which you thought seemed like it should be done, it's because, yeah, we would hope that it's finished before then. So with that scope and background in mind, we stratified the roadmap to focus on 2 key themes. So the first theme is expansion. If IBC is to be an interoperability standard, it really needs to move beyond just connecting Cosmos chains. And there's a lot of challenges around expanding IBC. It takes a lot of time to have a native IBC integration if you're not a Cosmos SDK Comet BFT chain. The cost of having an IBC integration comes with lots of maintenance costs, maintaining the implementation, relayers, and yeah, as I've already mentioned, of those over 100 chains which are already connected with IBC, the vast majority are Cosmos SDK and Comet BFT chains. So for us to fulfill this vision of becoming an interoperability standard, we really need to think bigger and go beyond Cosmos. So this kind of brings the three main objectives for expansion of minimizing development time to have an IBC integration, reduce maintenance costs of IBC integrations, and then enable a diverse range of blockchains to form IBC connections. So this can be layer ones or different rollup frameworks. So here I touch on the problem space in a bit more detail. Yeah, I already mentioned it's basically Cosmos chains and Polkadot right now that can form an IBC connection. And if you're not a Cosmos SDK chain, basically your choice is right now implement IBC from scratch, which a few projects have been working on. But this doesn't really seem like a sustainable approach. And if we have an implementation which is working really well and widely used, we should really think about trying to expand its reach. And with every new implementation as well, for like these diverse blockchains, you have the challenge of the relay infrastructure as well. So it's just really hard basically to expand IBC. So those are in the expansion theme. And then the other theme we want to focus on is usability. So in a cross-chain world, ideally the experience for a developer that wants to deploy something cross-chain, it should converge towards being able to deploy your application on a single chain. So this is just really like trying to make it as easy as possible to deploy cross-chain applications. And we've seen that token transfer is like the most used application for with IBC. But I think there's really a lot more that the protocol can offer. And so really we want to make this feature-rich applications that go far beyond token transfer better and easier to work with. And then the last objective here is differentiating IBC in comparison to other protocols. I think right now we're in quite a strong position. The protocol has really nice abstractions. It's got acknowledgements, timeouts. That's something that's really quite unique in comparison to other interoperability protocols out there right now. But we should really focus on kind of maintaining that position of strength. So jumping into some of the problems with usability, when IBC was launched, you have ICS 20, which defines the token transfer specifications. And it was, working well for sending tokens, but actually, since the blockchain ecosystem has developed, people want to send more than just tokens. They wanted to send data with tokens so that they can actually do something with those tokens. And there was a kind of solution for this of adding a memo field, but it wasn't super well specified. And it's also created some challenges of working with middleware, which could be improved. Another general challenge of working with transfer is dealing with IBC denoms. So you've got these hashes and this path dependency, which makes it really difficult for application developers kind of manually dealing with the denoms on the front end, all the way through to dealing with the path dependence aspect of tokens with IBC. And moving beyond just token transfer, we launched Interchain accounts in March 2022. I can't do the maths of how long ago that was on the spot. And the original launch required this custom authentication middleware. That was just an immediate barrier to adoption. This was refactored. And now since the callbacks middleware was launched, the V3 APIs can be depreciated. However, there's still other kind of pain points and difficulties in using ICA. And this is apparent through other solutions being developed, trying to solve some of these problems around a lack of cross-channel ordering, not having atomicity in workflows that span multiple channels, a general difficulty in error handling when you want to complete a workflow that requires multiple packets. And we've seen some people use the memo field and ICS20 middleware to kind of avoid using interchain accounts altogether. So basically this UX of doing transfer plus action could just do with some improvement. And then I think in general, it's kind of a strength and a weakness. IBC is a pretty complicated protocol. It's hard for people to learn, understand how it works. And this also just creates some difficulties in creating custom middleware or creating your own custom application. So yeah, with those kind of two key themes of expansion and usability in mind, I'll just go through the deliverables, and we've got Philippe and Sean who will go through the IBCRS and Hermes deliverables. So with expansion in mind, first deliverable is just scoping what an IBC Go integration with the OP stack would look like. There's some data which you can look through if you read the roadmap in your own time, but there's a lot of users who are kind of flocking to various rollup frameworks, and the OP stack has been a really popular rollup framework. So it seems like a pretty big strategic direction for expanding the reach of IBC Go. Similarly, I mentioned one of the problems with having a native IBC Go integration is it just takes a really long time unless you're a Cosmos SDK, Comet BFT chain. So there's some work to be done there to investigate how the kind of reference implementation of IBC Go could actually serve a much bigger user base. Then Philippe will mention, I think later, but as IBCRS is integrating with the Sovereign SDK, a ZK rollup framework, I think there's things that can be learned from this process, improvements to be made there. Then, yeah, another big goal on this expansion theme is scoping and understanding what should actually be the pathway forward to enable faster IBC integrations with a broader set of blockchains. So yeah, in some of the problems that I'd mentioned before, it just doesn't seem scalable to have a specific implementation for every single blockchain that might want to use IBC in the future. So yeah, there's research to be done here. These deliverables, multi-hop routing, upstreaming. So this specification was contributed by Polymer, and it takes advantage of the transport layer of IBC, which really differentiates it from other other interoperability protocols. And this has already been implemented, just should be upstreamed so that existing IBC chains can make use of this feature. Another deliverable here is about supporting this use case, which is already used by crypto.com for minting custodial assets. And this could just be a draw for other custodians and a kind of a push for more chains to adopt IBC, because this could be an alternative pathway for custodians to integrate their services. And on the usability front, we have the multi-packet atomicity. The ICS 999 solution was really focused on solving this. So if you wanted to do a transfer and an ICA action, if you perform a transfer, it could be successful, but there's no guarantee that the ICA message is successfully delivered. And this creates problems of error handling. So it would be really nice for application developers to be able to have multi-packet workflows which can be done atomically. The memo field specification, as I mentioned, the memo field is not really well specified right now. It's recommended to use JSON, but it's not enforced at the protocol level. And so there's general concerns about using this with middleware. There's kind of the possibility of key collision, and it's all, the middleware also has difficulties in wiring it up correctly for the specific ordering that you might want. So there's some general improvements to be done there. We've seen people using ICA, and a lot of the workflows require a balance query as well. So if this could be integrated into the existing application, this could make workflows more streamlined there. And the last usability deliverable would be on path unwinding with local on-chain registries. So emphasis is on the on-chain registries because there are already solutions which exist which use off-chain configuration for path unwinding. But if the network's going to grow substantially, having better routing capabilities would be important to kind of solve this denom issue. And then the rest of the deliverables are for IBCRS and Hermes, and then there's some maintenance deliverables. So I guess Philippe.
Yeah, I can take over, and whenever there's a Hermes point, I can let Sean chime in as well.
Yeah, sounds good.
So yeah, so implement middleware design pattern for IBCRS. We don't have it, and it would be very useful to enable a bunch of things like packet forward middleware or ICS 29 and so on. So it's just something we need, and we know we need it, and we've planned it for this year. Mostly straightforward. Then the next point, optimize IBCRS to be efficient to use with ZK rollup frameworks. Yeah, so we've been, as an exercise, integrating into the Sovereign SDK, and we're, I can foresee some challenges that we're going to have. One example is we use a regex library to determine if the chain ID is of a proper format. Well, that's probably very expensive to be used on a ZK rollup, where we could probably have something way simpler to determine if it's a chain ID is like a string dash something or whatever the format is. So this is the kind of optimizations I have in mind. There are some spec related ones that we could do as well, but they're not covered explicitly in this bullet point here. So next one, support mainnet for Namada, and I guess uncomposable moving off fork. I mean, we can treat both together. Whoever is using IBCRS and needs our support could be added here. Those are the two that we are currently aware of and helping. Again, we're very happy to help whoever needs, whoever is integrating and needs our help. So we're planning time for Namada. I know they found a couple bugs which were extremely thankful. And similarly for composable, they're going to have a few requirements that we might need to fix, and so we're happy to do that. And so we've also allocated time for that. And then exposing an async API, that's something we've known for a while. We currently only expose a synchronous API. If there are chains that need an asynchronous API, then they would not be able to use IBCRS. And so it could be, to basically increase the set of architectures that we support, an async API would be the next step. The next point, which is us and Hermes and IBC Go, provide educational and onboarding resources for developers. Yeah, I mean, it speaks for itself. Making it easier. Right now, you do need some domain knowledge in order to properly integrate. Having proper documentation is the next step to help new developers do it, and without having it scales better without having them to ask a bunch of questions, which we're happy to answer, but it just doesn't scale as well than having some good documentation that they can rely on. I don't know if Susanna or Sean, you had anything to add here?
I think, yeah, that one's quite self-explanatory.
Cool. Yep. Sean, I'll let you go for the next few points.
Cool. Thanks, Philip. Yeah, as far as the Hermes front is concerned, regarding both expansion and usability, the way we've opted to go about addressing both of these is by modularizing and kind of constructing a relayer framework that again generalizes a lot of the components that we use in Hermes, but making them much more agnostic, and just again making it much more agnostic to the consensus engine, to whatever like the Cosmos SDK, et cetera, and just fitting these components together in a much more logical and cohesive fashion in order to enable developers who come along and want to fork or build off of Hermes to kind of ease that whole on-ramp. Certainly because there just has been a lot of pain points with different folks who have come to us and forked Hermes for adding support for their chains or networks. Right off the top of my mind that I was just talking to recently would be Penumbra would be a good example. Like they have a lot of things that they need to do with their particular use case for catering to Penumbra chains that just don't work very well with a lot of the abstractions we've built into the current version of Hermes. For example, they need like a more stateful relayer where Hermes is stateless. And so with the current way and architecture that Hermes v1 is built out, that would not be all that simple to implement for their use case. But the idea with the relayer framework, once that's been kind of entirely built out, is you would be able to make some kind of stateful caching or state component that could just plug into the relayer software. And that whole flow would, again, the idea would be that that would be much easier for someone like Penumbra to go ahead and implement for their particular use case. So the again, the kind of relayer framework has been in the works for a while, and will continue to be worked on for a while, as it's generally kind of hard for us to find the right kind of balance of working on it, with balancing kind of like long-term and short-term concerns, working on both Hermes as well as this relayer framework in parallel. But it is something that we hope to make a lot of progress on in 2024. Yeah, scrolling down as far as the next one, supporting relaying needs of non-SDK and non-Cosmos chains. This kind of ties into what I was talking about with the relayer framework. That is, the relayer framework is set to kind of help to enable this. That being said, we have been talking to folks who were interested in, again, adding relayer support for their particular use cases. I just mentioned Penumbra. We're also going to be working with Sovereign on their off-chain relaying needs as well. So that's going to be more of like an explicit like support kind of role that the Hermes team will be playing. And the nice thing about how we're planning on going about implementing that support is kind of using the relayer framework software that I just mentioned to kind of prove that out and implement sovereign SDK relaying support using the framework software. And so that would serve as a really nice kind of validation and kind of learning step towards, again, making the relayer software more both full featured and kind of just battle testing the whole thing, just because at this point it hasn't had a lot of, the rubber hasn't so much met the road yet at this point. So that's going to be a nice kind of validation step in our case. So that's kind of the plan with that particular deliverable. And as Philip said as well, you know, whoever ends up coming along perhaps later in the year in 2024. So this deliverable again kind of just lumps in, you know, users and teams that we currently know of, and also the possibility that future users and future teams, future relaying use cases will come along that need our support. And then moving on, this one here, researching and scoping new paradigms for IBC relaying. This one's a little bit more speculative, but definitely we've been kind of brainstorming for a while whether, like, what a new kind of relaying paradigm might look like. And again, still very much in like the ideation phase, but I think it's probably about time in 2024 that we actually try to do some experimentation and validation of some of these ideas we've been kicking around. Some of these include enshrined IBC, which I believe was proposed by Polymer, and as well as this idea of like interchain routing, which is at a very high level kind of like, should we have things like chains doing, like if we had like relay or like sovereign chains that were, and I don't mean sovereign SDK chains, I mean like standalone chains that were responsible for doing relaying instead of kind of like having like an off-chain relaying component, for example. So that's like another idea that has been proposed. But yeah, kind of taking the time in 2024 to, again, really start to hone in on whether these are kind of valid ideas that we'd actually want to commit and move towards, as far as like trying to manifest a new relaying paradigm. And then the last one we have here is adding more explicit support for relaying between WASM clients. Hermes at this point is able to relay WASM messages, but we don't have any kind of like WASM enabled light clients. So that would be kind of the idea there as far as adding support for this. And then I think we're talking about some maintenance deliverables here. So I guess for at least the IBC Go ones, I can hand it back to you, Susanna.
Yeah, I mean, the maintenance deliverables aren't exactly the most exciting part of the roadmap, but they're just kind of the necessary things to keep products working. So yeah, we have like a release policy, making sure that we keep supporting the releases in the release policy. Another goal is making sure there's always a compatible IBC Go with the latest SDK and Comet releases. I know that there's kind of plans going into 2022 to decouple these release cycles, but that's not going to happen immediately. The IBCRS and Hermes compatibility as well. Is it? Well, I mean, sure, not Philippe can say, but yeah, do you have much to add? It's
just general updating to latest versions. That's not.
Yeah. Then for all of the products here, making sure you've got up-to-date documentation that's maintained. Here, ensuring applications are upgraded, and this has the grant tag. Testing package improvements for IBC Go, improved end-to-end testing, kind of important for maintaining the high security standards of the repos. Triaging issues, reviewing pull requests, fixing bugs, all kind of maintenance stuff. Just Hermes maintenance here. And yeah, providing ongoing support that happens in both public and private channels. And yeah, again, alignment on release cycles takes some coordination. So yeah, I'd say that kind of wraps up the document walkthrough. I can stop sharing now. Unless we want to go to specific parts, I can always open up the document again. Okay.
Okay, would you like to take a few of the questions from the tab, from the written questions? Right now we do have a specific Rust one. I think that's for Sean and Philippe.
Yeah, thanks Erwan for this. Yeah, so we've talked about, I'll answer for IBCRS, and Sean, maybe you can go for Hermes. We've talked about that in our developer calls as well. Yeah, I mean, I think it's for us to agree on a set of domain types that are, for context, domain types are Rust types that represent IBC structures, and to have them defined once is what R1 and Penumbra in general have been pushing for some time now. Yeah, I mean, hopefully, if we can come to agreement on to what these domain types should be, it would be absolutely desirable to have them in one place. So I agree. It was not in the explicitly in the roadmap. We should consider it to be in there. Yeah, thank you for that, Erwan.
Yeah, on that, I don't have too much more to add, but yeah, just the current state of the fragmentation that Erwan was talking about is like different projects will have different forks of the domain types that they rely on. So like Hermes, for example, has IBC relayer types crate that it depends on. There's like Penumbra's IBC types, and then IBCRS has its own set of types. And yeah, so that's kind of like the state of the domain types as it currently stands. Yeah, just wanted to point that out. And as Philip said, if there's consensus that we can come to as far as like being able to conform to one crate that different projects that depend on IBC depend on, then that would be great as far as consolidation is concerned. So just wanted to add that.
Awesome. Also, one note, Sean, I was really excited to see a lot of the deliverables in the Hermes roadmap. In the Go relayer, we've already abstracted away a lot of the Cosmos specific stuff and done a few non-standard integrations. And a couple of the other items on your roadmap, we've already got implemented as well. We'd love to help with our experience there. So please reach out to the team.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the offer, Jack.
Okay, there was a fragment of another question that's been already answered, but the question was, relayer software should support more IBC protocols like Composable and Quicksilver's ICQ. I think more for Hermes, because I know you talked about you're going to support WASM client, but yeah, ICQs and ICA, and tell us more.
Yeah, so for the Go relayer site, just to make sure that it's clear here, Go relayer already supports ICQ, both the IBC protocol as well as the non-standard one that just works through the clients. It's supported that for about 9 months now. We've got in progress composable support, and we have the APIs already to support a bunch of different chains. And I think Justin answered in some more detail as well on that. But yeah, also WASM client support comes out of the box in the Go relayer as we've developed the WASM client with the Go relayer.
Yeah, I will add ICQ support is something we're also working on in Hermes. No plans as of now there's nothing in the works right now as far as composable support, but duly noted that that perhaps is something that would be useful to feature in Hermes as well.
Okay, great. If you're in the attendee and you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand. Okay, we have Sheldon. I believe he's from Octopus Network. I might be wrong. Sheldon, you should be able to speak now.
Yeah, that's correct. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hey, so I realized that the setup for my question was a little bit long, but I tried to put like an abbreviated version at the bottom. You know, Composable is currently, you know, campaigning for 2 proposals, one on the Polkadot side, one on the Cosmos side. I've chimed in here and there on that. I'm happy about that, but it leads to the question, you know, with the sort of biz dev targeting that's labeled on Octopus in particular, I'm asking for myself, but also generally curious. You know, can we expect some reviews or validation from ICF, you know, from the Rust side, from, you know, from what we're trying to get put in? I mean, that was part of the hesitation before, is that it's just us as author and a paid auditor. We would love to have, you know, y'all's sort of stamp of approval in trying to get these things, you know, trusted by, let's say, Injective.
Susanna, Philippe.
What I don't know what Octopus was specifically working on, but I guess what you're asking for is an audit. Is that what?
You could say that. I wouldn't quite say it that way, because we're going to be paying for our own audit. We've just completed one, for example. But us authoring something and us doing an audit on our own is not great. You know, if you guys fund one from Halborn or whoever, it has roughly the same effect. We're, you know, trying to understand what the next 6 to 12 months of, you know, ICF helping other people trust the work that we're doing, that in some cases was seeded by you guys. You know, I just want other ecosystems to be willing to trust the implementation before we get to testnet, right? Like they should be looking at not just us and not just some paid third party and saying, okay, you know, maybe I don't understand this clearly, but what do other people think about this? That validation from you guys would be very helpful, like solution validation.
Is this on the specs as the first step? Is this?
Yeah. Susanna, do you want me to take a crack at this one?
Good. I guess I don't know precisely the context of
Yeah. I think, you know, Sheldon, what I hear you asking is what a lot of projects ask for when they want to integrate with IBC. It's a longer process, as Susanna has aptly mentioned, that does take a longer period of time. And dev teams require a lot of handholding and ongoing support, as well as support merging things upstream, support answering and asking questions about different parts of the software, as well as monetary support for things like audits, and then co-marketing as solutions come to market. Is this more your question, Sheldon? What across the full IBC development lifecycle support does the ICF plan to offer over the next calendar year?
I mean, roughly, yeah. Like I see the BizDev label next to 2 line items that we're working on at Octopus, and you know, I appreciate the support, but I don't understand it.
Yeah, so so Strangelove has done a lot of the work over the last couple of years, funded by the ICF to support different projects in the ecosystem. And I think that we're going to continue to do that. We're going to be presenting our roadmap next, and we've got a lot of biz dev support in there. I know that the Interchain Foundation under Susanna and Informal under Adi and the rest of the team there are also stepping up the support they provide to new projects. So I anticipate this year will be much better than previous years in terms of support for integrating non-standard IBC.
Okay, looking forward to it.
Sheldon, is this also related to adaptive IBC and the other kind of, let's say, parallel efforts that you guys are doing?
Yes, and we did just finish one of those audits in the past 48 hours, so I know I need to get that over to you guys for review, but that was also kind of my question is like, I know you guys work on a lot of stuff. Me dumping things on your front door and saying, hey, can you give us a sanity check isn't the most polite thing in the world.
Yeah, the question is quite a bit more broad than we can tackle here. It sounds like you're asking, how can we handle the increasing decentralization of IBC core developers and IBC businesses? And I think that's an amazing topic that we should think more about. I'm not sure if we can answer it here. What core teams can do is they can encourage more competition and encourage more innovation, which is what personally I'm trying to do. With Luis, when we spoke a few months ago, that was the main message that I left with, and the main message that he also provided to me, that he would like more support from us as core teams. It is difficult because IBC is such a critical piece of infrastructure, so we cannot just blast things on a rolling basis. It takes quite a bit of time, and the process is quite long. But it is, yeah, it's a complicated question that we cannot really answer here.
That's fair. I do hope to understand the impact of the answer in the next 6 to 12 months. So I'm not in a rush. I'll be around. But yeah, thanks. I respect the response. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have another question from Louis or Louis. Sorry if I mashed up the pronunciation of your name, but you should be able to speak now.
Yeah, Louis is good enough. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I'm also from Octopus Network, co-worker of Sheldon. So I want to make some clarification that Octopus Network, we take grants from ICF 3 years ago. And
I think you cut out.
Sorry, can you hear me?
I think you just cut out a bit.
Yeah, cool. So we implement substrate IBC. It's different, independent with Cosmos composable finance. So it's a long journey. It takes us almost 3 years to finish the last milestone, and it's about transplant IBC tau to substrate environment. But our grants depends on let's say beefy like clients which can run inside the Cosmos chain to finish all the scenario. But it should be another team's job to do this like client, but I don't know why, but they didn't finish the project. So we have to figure out a way to do our own version of beefy Go like client, and so it includes into our deliverable. But we are not experts in Go language or Cosmos SDK environment, so we cannot put it into a production ready state. And A-Star is a Polkadot ecosystem project, want to integrate with Cosmos Interchain using our implementation of substrate IBC. But the major bottleneck is there is no audited beefy live client. So, and we cannot find anyone who can do this work. So that is why Sheldon presents this question that can we got help on this part. So this is my major clarification on the topic.
All right.
We've also got Robert's question about relayers here. Why is relayers software dependent? Can we have a unified API? I imagine that there's a light client verification part, but this should be consensus dependent, not implementation dependent or IBC app related. So the way that the Quicksilver interchain queries is implemented, Robert, it's not actually an IBC app. It utilizes the IBC clients to perform verification on data from other chains, but it does not require any of the other flows. So it is technically a custom implementation. It uses many of the same pieces. Composable is just implementation of querying for and sending transactions to different blockchains, essentially. And that's most of the work when you're integrating other ecosystems, is picking up those libraries, doing transaction formation, and ensuring that you have the proper format for the IBC messages on the other chains. And does a new IBC app require a relayer update? It does not. The relayers just move forward back and forth opaque bytes. And it's a relatively straightforward process. That was a great question, Robert.
Okay. Our next question is from Robin.
Hello, can people hear me?
Yep.
Wonderful. I'm Robin from Notional. I'd like to start just by saying that I think these last two calls have been an absolute triumph in communication. I have learned so much just listening to them. So big thank you to all the teams and all the work that went into preparing them. My question, I guess, is focused for the IBC team for now. But a theme that I've heard a lot in these presentations is the need for better and clearer documentation. And the thing that I haven't noticed is any kind of explicit strategy for how that documentation comes about. I was wondering if the IBC team, anyone on it, would care to comment on, are you hiring a dedicated technical writer? Is that job kind of dispersed amongst the existing team? Will you outsource it? What's actually happening on that front? Thank you.
So there is a ICF strategic priority to bring in a DevRel for assisting with these kind of things. We have a DevRel as well, we're actually migrating some of our documentation, and there's some documentation improvements encompassed in that. But I guess there's different facets of the documentation, right? There's the IBC Go, I'm just taking it as an example, the predominant intended audience for that is for integrating IBC Go into your chain. It's not necessarily for learning explicitly to understand IBC and the protocol in detail. There is a developer portal with some documentation and tutorials, which covers a bit more step-by-step with some hands-on examples to try and understand IBC better. But yeah, there's kind of different facets focusing on slightly different things. So is the kind of the main concern around the integration documentation, or the resources to learn about IBC more generally? Just wanted to kind of.
Oh, I'm not really concerned. I was just curious what the plan is. Well, it's a theme that I've noticed across many presentations. We need better documentation. But actually, I don't think even one presentation yet has sort of addressed exactly how they intend approaching those issues.
Yeah,
Robin.
From an IBC Go perspective, we're doing a few different things from the IBC team at ICF. We're in the process of relaunching the docs site, and that will be cleaned up, easier to read, easier to use. That's coming very, very soon. You can expect it in the next few weeks. So that will be something that's happening this year. In addition, we're in the process of launching some new marketing assets for IBC that will include general educational content for IBC. So things like case studies, use cases, and general how-tos and explainers for basic IBC topics. That will be coming along down the pipe too, so you can look forward to that. And it is one of our priorities as well to be collaborating with the other teams to ensure that any documentation that we provide that does speak for quote unquote broader IBC includes as much information as possible about the other aspects of IBC that are managed by other teams. So that may mean things like linking out to their respective documentation when appropriate. It may mean things like having those teams come in and do content for upcoming marketing pieces to discuss about things that they manage and how to use those things. This is something that overall, we've just started really pushing on these efforts. And so you can look forward to that throughout this year and then going into next year as well.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, so Dad's here as well, so he can talk a bit more about some of the documentation improvements. But I mean, like one example is now having versioned documentation, so that's easier to use for integrators.
But yeah, I wanna say a couple of things about that as well. So yeah, as everyone said, you know what, IBC is and Cosmos is a very large stack. You know, there are a lot of different parts. There's IBC related to Cosmos. There's IBC when it comes to writing your middleware or writing an IBC app, or there's integrations with chains. I am the dev engineer in the IBC Go team, and yeah, we are in the middle of a migration for the stack we're using for the docs, switching to DocuStars. But that's not obviously gonna like make a big difference in terms of, you know, yeah, it's better better UX, but the content is about the same. But I can talk about some of my strategies going forward and the reason why this migration is going to help us, because this modular stack that we are migrating to will allow me to have like a separate tutorials tab. So the plan is basically, you know, I often create like these proof of concepts or examples, and to turn these into like a set of tutorials that can be hosted on the IBC Go docs. But yeah, so that's part of the plan. I think obviously there is not just one team that can solve all of it, because Cosmos is going to need its own docs, Hermes is going to need their own docs. But I think it would be nice to have a set of quick, small tutorials, maybe just about like creating an IBC app, or just about like a specific integration. Or for example, for Cosmoverse, I'm working on some basically a front-end demo that allows you to integrate the fee middleware to a front end. So that can become a tutorial. So I think these kind of small tutorials will go very far. So personally, that's my strategy. Anyway, thanks for the question.
Thanks, Robin.
Thanks.
There.
Thanks for the answer. That was awesome.
All right, guys. We're going to move on to the second team presentation. This is going to be the roadmap from Strangelove. So when you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. And about that question on documentation, we're going to speak a lot about developer experience in our presentation. And I think that is also part of the answer. Docs are one part of the answer, making the experience easy is the next part. So this is our roadmap at Strangelove for 2024. We have one focus. How do we drive IBC adoption? We target developers. This has always been the way that IBC has grown, and it will be the way that IBC continues to grow. And I think a laser focus on this is how we get there. So just to talk briefly about the software development lifecycle, more developers brings more ecosystem value, and you get more developers from better tools. And there's this kind of feedback loop here where as you get better tools, you get more developers who have more apps, who bring more value, that brings in more developers who give more feedback on tools, and you get better tools. And we're many years into this feedback cycle here in IBC, and we've already got an excellent tooling ecosystem, but it's time to kind of take it to the next level. Don't really do a good enough job of sort of talking about all of the work that we do at Strangelove. So I'm going to take just one quick second to talk about all of the various open source pieces that we've built in conjunction with the ICF over the last couple of years. The first one of those being the IBC Go Relayer, which is the second most used relayer implementation and was the first relayer implementation. We have Interchain Test, which is broadly adopted throughout the ecosystem as the best way to build and test IBC applications. Horcrux, which is the gold standard in securing validator operator keys. Cosmos Operator for running large installations of Cosmos nodes and Kubernetes clusters, complete with scheduled upgrades, disk resizing, all of the niceties that you would want in an operations team. The WASM Lite client, which is going to be key to bringing IBC to many, many different non-Cosmos ecosystems. swap and forward middleware for duality, along with packet forward middleware, which currently underlies the best user experiences in IBC, brought to you by Skip, TFM, and Squid. We're also building Gordian, which is a re-implementation of the Tendermint consensus protocol. That project is just coming out of stealth, and if you're interested, happy to chat more about it at a different point. Interchain queries, Juno tools, Lens, Gratz, and Vortex, which is a framework for spinning up large clusters of Tendermint and Comet nodes in many different cloud environments to do complex testing scenarios. Right now, it's a critical time for the IBC software development lifecycle. We've got a lot of teams that are starting to pile in and build on top of this, and we have a critical crunch as an IBC core team where there's more work to do than we possibly have time, and there's more inbound than we have time to deal with. And the way to scale ourselves as a core team without spending too much more money is to invest in this software development lifecycle and ensure that we're meeting the needs of developers. The highest priority here is go-to-market and adoption. And that's because the competition that we face, centralized bridges, are dangerous and a proven vector for hacks, yet they're still growing. And I think that that is a big risk that we need to address. We need to continue to invest in security, as Suzanne and the IBC Go team, as well as the Informal team, aptly pointed out. And we need that reliability in the software to be driven by Q&A and strong testing standards. So the ICF set out some themes for their core teams this year, one of which was modularity, abstracting away the Cosmos SDK from IBC Go and enabling it to be used in many different architectures that are also built in Go is really a key initiative this year. The Pocket Network team has started doing that work. There's a few other folks who are interested, but if we want OP Stack or some other EVM-based IBC compatibility, we need to do that. The conditional light client is another key piece of cross-ecosystem adoption. As we see the rise of optimistic rollups, CK rollups, data availability layers, shared sequencers, and a lot of these more complex architectures, proofs of packet inclusion will need data from multiple different places. We think it's extremely important to be able to call those things together and reduce extra state on chains, and that is a key part of it. We've worked closely with non-Cosmos SDK chains connected over IBC to help modularize the various interfaces, and we're going to continue to do that. And another piece of modularity is thinking about IBC applications on non-Cosmos chains. We're really at the beginning of that work, and I think that as we're talking about an ICA successor, we really need to make sure that that works across various different architectures. This work should also be informed by the modularization of the IBC Solidity libraries, which have been built by DataChain and are currently being forked by Composable, Union, Polymer, and a couple of other teams. We should see some standardization there over the next year. Developer experience is the second theme that the ICF has put down this year. We're going to continue building Interchain Test, which has been adopted by Archway, Juno, Quicksilver, Composable, Quasar, Skip, NIM, Notional, Stargaze, Osmosis, Persistence, Penumbra, Icon, Orachain, Duality, DAO, Neutron, Noble, Dimension, Kive, Polymer, and a number of other teams. This is the gold standard in testing complex cross-chain applications, and we built it as an extensible framework that can continue to be developed. We're building out local interchain with that, as well as a number of other developer tooling pieces that will be key in building the IBC developer experience over the next year. I mentioned earlier that Relay has implemented a lot of the features that are needed for this growing interchain, including modularity within the interfaces to enable integration of non-Cosmos chains, things like fee-grant to enable sending many transactions in a given block, as well as a number of other things. We're going to continue to push the boundaries of relaying experience with Relay, and we seek to provide the best relaying software in the interchain. On the testing side, Interchain Test is only part of that. Building tooling to help much more complex cloud experiences is going to be increasingly important in these testing frameworks, and it's increasingly demanded by teams, whether or not that's a Kubernetes backend for interchain test or the Nomad console-based system we have with Vert. We're dedicated to continuing to push the boundaries there. One key piece of developer experience that we'd also really like to build this year is an IB3 abstraction shim for other bridges. So this would be the ability to use things like Wormhole, Axelar, and Hyperlane as a transport for IBC packets to all of the different places that they go. This would be in conjunction with some production IBC Solidity libraries, and it would enable us to bring IBC developer semantics to more and more developers in an extremely short period of time with very little investment. We think this is the highest leverage way we can reach the most developers with IBC. And as we mentioned earlier, funding for docs, tutorials, and other support is critical. Another key theme for the ICF this year is paying down of technical debt. Ongoing maintenance of the IBC apps repo that Strangelove maintains, as well as our other products that I mentioned earlier, is a key part of our proposal as well. And we think that upgrades across the ecosystem, IBC Go, channel upgrades, apps and middlewares, these are key pieces that need to be taken care of. Right now, the upgrade cycles for a lot of chains are extremely slow, and there's a lot of reasons for that. We think we as the IBC community can help make that better. The testing of upgrades and IBC integrations, increasing that with interchain test and other tools is going to be increasingly critical. We're supporting teams all over the interchain with this, and we think that we can do a much better job in quality assurance on upgrades. Finally, adoption and go-to-market, the key piece that all of the other three pieces build towards. We're looking to have an Avalanche subnet connected with IBC directly. We saw Jacob mention Avalanche IBC earlier. We've been working on that for a while. We should have it live early next year. WASM light client adoption across the ecosystem. We were talking about chain upgrades a second ago. This will come in. Smart contract IBC. It is very possible, and in fact, many protocols do right now, use custom IBC protocols between different smart contracts on different chains. We believe this is going to be a key use case for IBC moving forward, and we're building tooling and support to help developers do this. We also think that this is a key segment in the go-to-market for IBC to win, because we see protocols like Socket and Layer 0 going after this market on the Ethereum side. We need to be sure to support it on the Cosmos side and be able to go after it on the Ethereum side once we have good Solidity libraries. Building with IBC needs to be faster and safer. I think that's been a big theme today. And we've got a number of things on the IBC applications front, especially on cross-chain IBC applications, that are extremely important. Continuing to support chains like Polkadot, Near, ZK rollups, optimistic rollups, and all the other ones, supporting them in building IBC. And this is what Strangelove plans to do this year. So for us, we have one focus. It's adoption. And we love to write software, and we love to collaborate. And we plan to do so up and down the stack this year. At the Comet layer, we built out a number of testing primitives that will help. We're also working on the from scratch reimplementation of the Tendermint protocol in Gordian, which we think has a number of learnings that can help inform the work that Informal is doing there. On the Cosmos SDK layer, we plan on building a number of different proof of authority modules to help chains have better options for spinning up smaller validator sets. We've started that work this year, but we plan to continue it throughout the next year. And there's a few other offshoots of that work that we will likely be doing as well. On the Cosm.js side, we are partnering with Dan and the Cosmology team to bring interchain test to Starship. This will allow for a seamless developer experience and for developers to utilize the best tooling for spinning up chains locally in order to do their integration testing. This is a key piece of the smart contract to smart contract IBC flow. And with Starship, we'll be able to offer an experience where developers basically only write front-end code, define their data models on chain, and then everything else is taken care of for them under the hood. On the COSM WASM side, Interchain Test has native support for COSM WASM and is the preferred way that smart contract to smart contract IBC is built right now. Mesh security uses Interchain Test, as does Polytone and ICS 999. We plan to continue to support users and expand support for those use cases. IBC goes way beyond Cosmos, always has wanted to, and finally is fulfilling that goal. We think over the next year, the Interchain is going to expand by leaps and bounds, and we plan to be a key part of that and help as many teams as we can grow the Interchain. If you're interested, please hit us up. We'd love to chat. Also, if you like our roadmap, please submit feedback forms. There's a link. I think Saeed will share a link here later. And Strangelove will be in Istanbul for Cosmoverse. We'll see you there. Thank you guys very much for your time. If you've got any questions, happy to answer those now.
Okay, so we have a open question on, I will try not to make a hash of it, but so wouldn't using wormhole, hyperlane, layer 0, etc. as a transport layer for IBC go against the fundamental vision we all have for IBC, which is to make IBC the transport layer, and other messaging layers could use it as the transport and not the other way around? For example, the Evermos team is working on standardizing the IBC transport with their DIBC, which other messaging protocols can plug into.
Yeah, Adi, I disagree that it goes against the fundamental vision we all have for IBC. I think the fundamental vision we all have for IBC is a developer anywhere on any chain can send a message to any other chain or any other smart contract with the same set of semantics. That, to me, is the key part of IBC. Actually, can you bring that question up so that I can answer it in some detail? Because I think this is a key part of the Strangelove proposal, and I'd like to dig into this in some detail. A communication protocol is only as good as where it has endpoints or where it addresses. And right now, as was really aptly pointed out, IBC does a great job of addressing Cosmos, and it does a really poor job of addressing ecosystems outside of Cosmos. In order to reach optimistic rollups, ZK rollups, and a number of other things, the Interchain team has shown that incredible amount of engineering work that's going to be required to mutate the core interfaces and to allow for that. That work is planned to take at least a year. We don't really have that time. You know, Wormhole and all of these other protocols are going to eat our lunch in terms of adoption. And because they address more value, i.e. users can transport value from more places, and the places where they can transport value from have more value in them, we will end up losing out on this adoption battle, and other people will set the standard for cross-chain communication. If we can bring the same developer semantics to many different chains, I believe that we'll have a chance with the transport layer to bring a higher security option and still win this battle. Our positioning as the open source standard for cross-chain communication that is free and open is unassailable, and there's no real competition for it. The combination of enabling developers to use this protocol with other bridges is unbeatable, and it's a very fast time to market to help us address these quickly growing markets. We believe this is a critical thing to fund over the next year. Thank you for that question, Adi. I think that was great.
Right, I'm going to take a question from Bo, I believe, from Polymer. Bo, you should be able to speak.
Yeah, I don't agree with Jack necessarily on using these alternative transport layers. Like, from my perspective, the value of IBC is in its sovereignness. Like, it is the only networking or interoperability protocol that encodes network information on chain. It sets the pathway for decentralized discovery of peers in a say like a wide network. You don't get that when you remove the IBC core spec and you gut the transport spec. I think it's really important.
Bo, I'm not gutting the transport spec. The transport spec is key. We're leaving it, and it's still broadly used. It will continue to be the broad way to use IBC. We're proposing to offer developers a new way to use the semantics to help lure them into the ecosystem and lock them into those developer semantics. I understand that Polymer doesn't want to do this. You guys have released your own IBC roadmap, and we believe that you guys should go ahead and build that as well. I don't think that coming here and lobbying against Strangelove's perspective is a helpful use of time. Please submit feedback forms, and I'm happy to hear that as well.
Sure. I'm just trying to explain like the differences in approach here. Like a VM-based approach is like inherently different. If you offer someone something different in the long-term time horizon, it's not a very differentiated approach from other competition. But that's like, we can have that conversation offline.
Okay.
Yeah, my DMs are open. I'd love to chat with you about this, Bo. I think that there's a lot that both of our teams can do together, and collaborating instead of competing is a way better way to go.
Thank you, Bo. I have another question, maybe comment. So trust minimization is the entire point. Layers 0 said they would use IBC semantics.
Layer 0 never did use IBC semantics, and they used IBC's credibility as a way to raise their Series A. They have done nothing to standardize on IBC semantics. And in fact, they've gone a completely different direction. So that is kind of an incorrect read on the situation.
Cool, thank you. I'm going to go back to one of the questions from before. So Maria, I think we have you back in the room now.
Yes.
There was a question from Sheldon from Octopus Network. They're working on a cross-ecosystem IBC client, and the question was, what sort of support can teams who are building cross-ecosystem clients receive from the ICF? Specifically on security audits, but just generally engineering and other sorts of support. How big of a priority is it for the ICF to work on cross-ecosystem connections?
This is a priority. The way we are thinking about supporting other teams, for example, is through this grants program that we want to open up for 2024. So the idea is that we are also going to have some budget for those grants that are more like, it can be smaller in a sense. Right now, the way that we are working with the different independent teams that are developing the different areas is that these grants are big grants, and they are taking their responsibility as stewards of that part of the stack to develop and move forward the direction of that development. For smaller projects, we want to open up a public grants program. This grants program is going to be smaller in the sense of work scope, but also funding. However, the idea is that maybe through these roadmaps, and if you guys look at the document from Susanna in the deliverables, there are some sections that are selected as grants in green. So that means that other teams can plug into to those roadmaps through these smaller grants. But maybe those projects that start small can evolve into a bigger part of the stack. We will have to see, but this is how we are thinking about open up for more people to chime in and participate. Of course, the resources of the ICF are limited, and we need to also manage that. There is going to be a budget for those smaller grants for 2024, and as soon as we are ready, we will announce that. Right now, we are working on around the big pieces of the stack and working directly with the dev teams that we are collaborating right now with. And as soon as all this work is done for 2024 and how the allocations of resources are going to be done for 2024, we are going to have some space on setting up a proper public process for the smaller grants and announce that. But that is definitely going to work as of 2024. For the moment, we don't have enough resources to really open up for 2023. This is the main reason for us now opening smaller grants, as some of you may know, we are looking for an ecosystem development. We need some human resources inside the ICF, so we are able to deliver on this quicker. But this is the way we are thinking about. I hope that I have responded the question.
Just to follow up and a bit more clarity. So I think Octopus was looking, and this is from a comment from Jacob, and I think Alex also agreed. I think Octopus is looking more for some consultation on their journey and less so for money. So it's
Okay.
about support us in building this out.
Yeah, no, we will be super open for that. And also with the help of the teams that we are working with, I think I mean, that's the idea of all this effort that we are doing.
All right, sounds good. Next, another written question from Barry. What are the biggest opportunities for increasing IBC adoption, users, developers, liquidity that Strangelove is focused on? I believe that's for you, Jack.
Yeah, it is. Barry, that's a great question. Thank you very much. I think mainnet Ethereum is like number one. It is obviously the largest smart contracting platform out there. There are currently 3 teams looking at doing this work. The Union team, the Composable team, and the Polymer team all have separate efforts to bridge mainnet Ethereum with direct IBC. These would be targeting the Altair-like client and using various different methods to make the Tendermint-like client gas efficient, including ZK and BLS. The key piece there is Solidity developer experience. All 3 teams have a separate approach to this, all 3 of which are closed source. I think as they reach into the open source, aligning those is going to be critical. The other key area that we need to reach is optimistic rollups on top of Ethereum. This is where a lot of the users are right now. And while maybe it's not where the users are forever, that's where they are right now. And I think IBC needs to be there. We think that providing access through other bridging providers is the best way to get there quickly, and to provide those developer semantics, lock those developers in. And then once we have higher security options like the direct IBC bridge over to Ethereum, or some of the work that the Interchain Berlin team plans on delivering at the end of next year on the optimistic rollup IBC, then we can switch the developers over to better transport. But we think this is the right way to reach those developers. Thank you for the question, Barry.
Thank you, Jack. All right, we have a comment from Ismail. Not a question, but just wanted to give kudos to Strangelove. Also looking forward to Gordian. Agreed that making IBC using Hyperlane, etc., does not necessarily contradict with the IBC, depending on how it's done. If it creates more dev adoption, that would be a good thing for the whole IBC ecosystem. Either way, I need to hop. Thank you all. Thanks for coming.
Ishmael. Yeah, thank you very much. And just to, as Syed, I heard you kind of like raise a question mark on Gordian. Gordian is a from scratch reimplementation of Tendermint that we're working on. And the goal for that is to be IBC compatible and to provide ways for developers to modify the underlying consensus protocol that's currently hard in the existing code base, as well as a focus on performance. Thank you very much for the support, Ishmael. Appreciate that.
All right. Any other questions? Please feel free to raise your hands. Raise your hand if you don't want to type. Okay, nothing else. Oh, give me a second. We're going to take a question from Dean Agoric. Dean, you should be able to speak now.
Hello. Yes. Good. So mostly this was kind of in support of what Jack said, but it's really a little bit about the inter part. Internet was a network of different substrates, all able to do the same application protocols across it, that we could then layer in. Once that shared way of using it was there, we could drive in security protocols and get the most secure, the most adaptable protocols to be spread everywhere. And so that as a strategy, I think is something that IBC in general should take as a key way of how we do things. So I had a question for some of the other presenters of what are they doing, or how can they help support the adoption of, the general IBC model onto other, similar but not quite the same network protocols, in a way that from the developer's point of view, it's uniform. And as the infrastructure improves and gets upgraded with the better security of IBC or IBC2 or any advances we come up with, how we can have it be that, that's an underlying chain upgrade thing that the applications running on the chain just get to take advantage of transparently, the same way we do when we improved elements of IP network routing. And so I appreciate the questions around this, but I'm very supportive of, let's make sure the usage of a protocol, that whether it's going over IBC, which makes it easy and fast and so forth, or over Squid or over Hyperlane or over IBC2 or whatever it is, we want, from the programmer's point of view, it's the semantics that we all spent a lot of time getting right in the spec that we would really like to support, and I really appreciate the folks that are helping make that happen. And some of that fits into like straightening out decimals and straightening out denoms, so the semantics of talking about different kinds of tokens across different chains over all these different transports is going to be nice and uniform.
Yeah, that's the key. That's the key unlock. This is the one protocol that helps all developers reach all the blockchains, and I strongly agree, Dean. Thank you for the support.
All right.
I have a non-IBC question, but that would be for the other. I could add it here if that's not related to Strangelove though.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
So a big part of the programmability is also around sort of the user experience of security, the user experience of names, the user experience of signing actions. And so one of the things that has been bandied about, and it's gotten, some traction and there's a lot of implementation, but it hasn't, as far as I know, quite been carried over the finish line, are things like decimal metadata that shows up a little bit in the denom discussion I saw, but also things like sign mode textual, which I didn't see anything about at all, and things of that ilk that really make the user experience of approving things, especially in the interop world where you're approving transactions that span chains and ecosystems. And that seems like an area that is critical to get some energy on, and that didn't show up. There wasn't as much as I expected showing up overall in the high level, what is ICF trying to do? Where does that show up, and what is being done in that area of, in particular, getting some of the things that are already been done around sign mode textual or denom metadata over the finish line, but also getting, transfer NFTs and some of these other things that really enable new use cases.
Yeah, Dean, I think the sign mode textual work is at a very late stage. My understanding is that early versions of it are merged into 050. Isn't that correct?
I think that's what I said. I think there's been a lot of progress getting the technical underpinnings and getting it out through the user model and the wallets and the cross-chain stuff. I mean, I think there's progress happening.
Were you at the
really
SDK call yesterday, Dean? Were you at the SDK call yesterday, Dean?
I was not.
So the Zondax team presented on exactly this, and Marco addressed this in his thing. I would encourage you to go back and watch the video. They did an excellent job on this particular topic.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Also, Dean, after this call, we can follow up with you because sign mode textual is live now, or about to become live. So I know Zondax is actively reaching out to people to sort out the implementation. So I'll put you in touch after this call.
Huzzah! Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for coming. All right, so we have some more discussion around Hyperlane. So I'm going to ask Bo to come on up and say more, please.
Thanks, Syed. I wanted to clarify, I wasn't talking earlier about the security model used. I think it may have sounded like I was talking about that. I was talking about uniformity, like everyone else on this call, and it's uniformity around the type of commitment that's produced by a protocol. This commitment enables you to implement various features like native acknowledgements and timeouts in a standardized way. If you look at the Hyperlane implementation, currently they don't actually support native acknowledgements. They do not support timeouts. They do not support the same basic feature set as IBC, in addition to not being aligned with which keys do we commit to state and what do they mean and what are these like common like quote unquote transport layer abstractions. That's mostly what I want them to agree on. Whether or not they want to use like a solo machine client for Relay, that's a different story.
Yeah, Bo, we've worked really hard to try to push these direct IBC semantics. What we've found is that there's a tremendous amount of investment not in those IBC semantics, and we don't really have a lot of teams because of the funding model for IBC that have any vested interest in the existing semantics, and we found it incredibly hard to go drive adoption that way. What we have found is that those bridging teams love the work we've done in IBC and are very interested in merging networks. And we do think that this is a great way to, as Dean and the Celestia team and the Skip team all mentioned, bring IBC developer semantics to a much broader audience. And I think that being too dogmatic about these IBC specs is going to hamper adoption more than help us. And trust me, I understand the complexity that this introduces. I wish we didn't have to go this direction. And I've spent the last 2 years trying to build so we didn't have to do this. But based on where the market is now and where adoption is happening within the ecosystem, all places that are very hard to bridge with IBC and will require over a year of effort to do so in the canonical way, we believe that intermediate steps are needed, whether it is a solo machine like client or transport through some of these other things. We think it's going to be incredibly important to bring these IBC developer semantics to more folks.
I mean, I'm fine with them, using if Hyperlane like promoting their transport layer, like offering that as an option. Anyone can build anything in this state. I think the issue comes when you don't even have the same set of basic features, and you're promoting and marketing something as IBC. I think I'm not promoting
and marketing anything as IBC.
Okay. But I think we're in agreement here.
I'm promoting and marketing IBC as IBC, which is what I've always done.
Okay, I think we're in alignment there.
Great, awesome, Bo. Thank you. Really appreciate the question.
All right, we have Barry who has a question.
Hey, I guess this is less of a question and more of a comment on how Skip sees things. I have not been in the IBC community for more than I guess a year and a half now, so I don't have all the historical context on how we develop the standards and where they come from as much. But we build a lot of products on top of IBC, and we really love it. I just think the framing that I appreciate is this focus on adoption, though. So from our perspective, and we work with every major Cosmos chain, Celestia, Osmosis, DYDX, everyone really, and we really love doing that. And a really common theme that we should just I think be explicit about in the context of IBC is our ecosystem has less liquidity, developers and users than our technologies fundamentally deserve. And this is just become so clear to me from how easy it has been to build interop on top of Cosmos as compared to elsewhere for us. And anything that we can do to kind of expand the reach of the core technologies, especially IBC, I think is just really, really beneficial from the ecosystem. And so, you know, I think we would generally appreciate trying to move this conversation in particular, but also the conversation in general away from semantics of like, you know, what is and isn't IBC towards what are both like practical short term as well as, you know, more ambitious longer term things that we can do to help expand the technology. And I think it's nice that we have teams represented here that are working on both of those things. So just want to point that out and want to kind of make sure we can refocus on like the practicals of what we're trying to do here, which is what my question in the chat was about, which is like, we're talking a lot about expansion. I was curious to hear Jack's thoughts on like which venues for expansion are kind of most attractive right now, and which ones that Strangelove or is prioritizing or thinks the ecosystem should prioritize over others.
Oh, I was going to add that I agree with you, Barry. I'm speaking in practical terms here. I'm not trying to argue about the semantics. There's just, I guess, like the idea behind Polymer is we want to bring like this IBC feature set to all these different chains. Of course, like if you have a different interop protocol, that's fine. If you can grow the network, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But just pointing out the fact that there are some like core functional differences between these things.
All right, cool. I do hope that you guys take this discussion further in the IBC Dev community calls. But in the meantime, if there are no more questions, I'm going to pass it over to Maria to close out the call.
Thank you, Said, and thank you to the teams, to Susanna, and to Jack, also for leading this call today. I hope that this call has been useful for everybody. And like I said at the beginning, the idea that this is just a starting point. We want to open up more. We want to do these type of things more. We want to have more discussions about what are the plans, what is it that the different teams are focused on, and how can new teams chime in as well. So please continue giving feedback on the roadmaps. As I said, you can give writing feedback. We have the feedback is continuous, but we have a first window of feedback that goes to until September the 30th. The thing is that we want the teams to use this feedback to work on the first iteration of these roadmaps, because these roadmaps are the ones that we are going to use in order to base the decision around the allocation of funds of the ICF for 2024. We will announce more on this regard later. There was a question in the chat at some point during the call. I had to disconnect for a couple of minutes because of a personal reason. But there was a question also about how can new teams chime in, and I wanted to take a little bit of time to respond on that. The idea is that with the dev teams that we are working on the different areas, they, as I said, they do run community calls, and the idea is that from now on, now that we have a roadmap, this is going to be a living document and is well known for everybody. So from now on, you guys are going to be able, the new teams that want to have some influence on those roadmaps, and not only the new teams, but the teams that are working and contributing to the different pieces of the stack, or that are interested about contributing, even if they don't work directly with us. The idea is that they also can influence those roadmaps. So continue doing so. Thank you so much for that. And this is it. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, again.
Thank you, Maria.
All right, thank you, everyone. Please do continue sending us your written feedback. After this call, we will email everyone, probably not tonight, but at some point this week, we will email everyone the feedback form again, along with a link to the roadmap. So please do keep the feedback coming.